Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about my first impressions of Furnace, along with the Interbellum expansion. And with this episode, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to introduce the voice of a new resident. We'll call her Ava. And Dr. Ava is going to be an AI voice, obviously, but for the sake of variety, I hope that this is something that is interesting. And I'll be back on with my 2 cents at the end of the episode, but here is Ava with the breakdown on this game and game comparisons and peer review.
In Furnace, players embody 19th century capitalists striving to amass wealth through strategic industrialization. Over 4 rounds, players engage in auctions to acquire companies, strategically placing colored discs for control. During production, they utilize their acquired companies to extract resources, process them, and upgrade their capabilities. The game culminates in wealth accumulation, with the player boasting the highest monetary value emerging victorious. Optional capitalist cards and production chain challenges add further depth to the gameplay, enhancing the strategic complexity of this engine-building Eurogame. In the Interbellum expansion for Furnace, set in the interwar period of the 20th century, players encounter new company cards, capitalists, manager tokens, variable capital discs, components for a 5th player, and agents for 2-player and single-player games, all within the backdrop of beautifully crafted Art Deco, constructivism, and Bauhaus-inspired industrial buildings and structures, providing an enriched gameplay experience best integrated with the base game for seasoned players. Now to highlight the mechanisms this game has. First, the auction. Players vie for buildings in the auction row by placing tokens from 1 to 4, with an additional variable bidding marker in the expansion. Winners get the building, but losers get compensated by resources or conversions listed at the top of each card. Thus, decisions on what cards to buy for yourself and what cards to use for their compensation ability are tough each round. Second, the engine building. Players simultaneously activate their cards in whichever order they want, converting resources into other resources, and some of them into money for endgame victory points. Cards can be upgraded during the game for better effects. The expansion adds more variety in what cards do, with the majority of these more complex cards being found in each game when setting up with the expansion. Third, the asymmetric player powers. Each player gets a card that gives starting resources and a base ability to upgrade other cards in the game, as well as a character card that allows the player to bend the rules slightly. This creates potentially new ways to view objectives in the game and how to accomplish them as you bid for cards. Finally, the additional mechanisms the expansion offers. Not only do you get a variable bidding marker that uses coal to increase your bid, being able to outbid even the biggest bid marker in the base game. There are scholarly buildings that remain the same in each bidding round, offering the same compensation effects, but they cycle through manager abilities, which you purchase and assign to one of your existing cards in your tableau, augmenting its effect for 1 round, also creating new synergies. Let's compare this game to some others. As far as auctioning goes, the first game that comes to mind is Interbellum. Interbellum is more focused with the auctioning, but offers the mechanism of ever-increasing tokens for bidding, including a race to get better tokens to play with in addition to winning cards for your tableau. This is reminiscent of the variable bidding token in the Interbellum expansion, which adds some depth to the auctioning experience. Next is the Rosenberg pick for a comparison, which is Oranienburger Kanal. Both games have a similar feel in terms of theme and engine-building mechanisms, where the engine revolves around producing resources, converting them into different resources or points that increase in grandiosity throughout the game. Furnace is quicker and multiplayer, while Oranienburger Kanal is a 2-player game with more complex resource management, 6 resources including money in Kanal, versus 3 in Furnace, and spatial puzzle solving with the placement of 4 different routes surrounding buildings. Let's see what other people had to say about Furnace in the comment section on Board Game Geek. For praise, this game packs a lot of strategic punch in a short amount of time. Other games the community compares this to in terms of rules overhead to strategy ratio include Race Arcana, Splendor, and Century Spice Road, but with an auctioning mechanism that's as streamlined as other famous auctioning games like Raw. There are variations of playing the game, such as lining up your cards permanently to activate them in a row instead of in a variable way, which offers new ways to look at the game. As for concerns, to some people, the art didn't quite make the game look great on the table. In addition, the puzzle of resource conversion is pretty straightforward in the game, with the lack of complexity that is enticing for multiple plays, which is addressed by some with the expansion. Other than that, not many people have bad things to say about this game. Overall, people really enjoyed it.
This is Phil again. So, with my first impressions of this game, I've been hearing a lot about this game, first of all, for a few years, and I understand the hype after playing the game. I did play it the easy way without the fixed order variant of assembling your cards, so with that challenge I can see this game becoming a lot harder, but even so I think this game was great because the resource conversion was easy enough that it felt like it was a great introduction to resource conversion for those who aren't familiar with it. And it was still a good enough puzzle, especially with the first time go around with this game, that it kept me intrigued throughout the 4 rounds. And it's a very quick game in and of itself, and so it didn't need to be very complex for the game length and how many rounds it took to do so. The auctioning part was really fun to me. I liked parsing out which cards I wanted for raw resources or conversions that are listed at the top of the card versus what cards I would want to buy and add to my tableau. And it kept it tense during other players' turns as well, where I was hoping that they would not bid for the card, or if they did bid for the card, bid a different number than what I was planning to put on. And so there was a lot of good tension around the table, even on your downtime, depending on what other players were doing. I also wanted to mention here that the solo play with the expansion and the dummy agent cards that you use in the 2-player game was a lot of fun as well. I didn't get into it in the breakdown, but essentially what you do is you roll a dice assigned to an agent. If you are playing with the 2-player version, you play with one of these agents, these Automa AI bots, and in the solo version you play with 2. So you roll a dice and you try to bid according to what that dice number tells you to, and it starts at that card from the left in the market row, and you follow some steps for preferences based off of the AI's or the agent's preferences, and so you place discs accordingly. It was really easy to run, it was easy to follow, and the scores were pretty competitive as well, especially, and I would predict that they would be, especially with the fixed order variant. And so, I think there were 4 agents that are provided in the expansion. Of note, the base game does not offer solo play, but the expansion and the additional agents provided a good challenge to try to overcome. So, in sum, I liked this game a lot, and I can see it going really well with my friends, both hardcore gamers and a more casual group, to have a lot of fun with. After playing with the expansion as well, I prefer the added complexity of some of those cards that you add to the main deck, as well as some of the other incentives like the manager tokens, the variable bidding token as well. I think with those additions, I would not go back to the base game. It does feel like the approach is the same as far as the strategic complexity is concerned, and it does, I think, match with the complexity both with rules and strategy. I think more so with rules, like the rules teach for games like Splendor and Nidavellir. It approaches that same kind of medium-light complexity, but I think I would prefer this game, Furnace, over those because of the strategic depth that this game provides in such a quick playtime. I think I would definitely prefer to play a game with more complexity, such as Oranienburger Canal, obviously, which is a heavier game. It is a Rosenberg game, which I do prefer anyway, but it provides a lot more of a rewarding feeling when it comes to tableau building because of the spatial puzzling and route building and the more complex resource management and conversion with 6 resources rather than 3 in Furnace. But it does obviously take a lot longer to play, and so if I did have less time and I wanted a resource conversion and management experience in a very fractionated time, as well as something that I could play with more than 2 players, I think the next best thing for me would be Furnace. So those are my first impressions on Furnace and the expansion Interbellum. Thank you for consulting with me today, and hope that you schedule an appointment with your board gaming doctor real soon. Take care.